Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Let's Remember Skies of Arcadia. We are heading into the final dungeon, Soltis. And to do so, we must get into Shrine Island. However, there is a small complication. And hopefully we'll get through it very quickly. There is a sort of flying defense robot for us to take care of. Not too bad, but we'll take care of it. Really, it's the same pattern that we know by now, but, you know, that's okay. We're moving along through the game at a breakneck pace, or at least I have in this last session or two. Really, it sounds funny. It's almost as though, to an extent, I feel that there's nothing that needs to be said. I almost feel like the experience, ever since probably Dangral 2, has spoken for itself, which has almost been a great position to be in. Part of me would like to think that you're here because you enjoy the things I say, but larger part of me would like to think that you're here because you enjoy this game, and you enjoy watching it played. So, having the game able to acquit itself without me needing to particularly explicate upon the things that it's doing anymore is very, very gratifying. That's not to say that the discussion is over, but many of the things that this game says to me, or speaks to me, I don't need to worry about speaking about until maybe we finally reach the end of our journey. Now it's mostly a matter of sitting back, getting through the rest of the encounters, and going from there. I think the endgame of Skies of Arcadia is very strong. If that hasn't been evidenced by the amount of times in the last couple of videos I've gone like, this is cool, or this is awesome, I don't know what will convince you. But in truth, I really think that the pace of everything, well, perhaps at times seeming almost too fast, is still quite manageable. And so, I don't even need to destroy that robot. I just need to make the approach and survive. I still use the spirit generation there just in case, but otherwise I'm sort of in the clear, although I do want to heal the Delphinus because this will not be the last time I need to use her. And so, what we will do, possibly, it's hard to judge what our plan of action here will be. Whether or not it will be playing to the end of the game, or breaking up some of the final boss segments or anything, will largely be dependent on how quickly I can remember the pathway through Shrine Island and Soltis. If this was a playthrough where I wanted to get the final cham and everything, this would take a little while, there would be some more cuts, but in this case we don't need to worry about that because, as we previously that sentence got away from me. As we've previously established, I can't get the final cham, so now we're sort of straight-shotting it through the game. And as I've said, it's very nice to come back to the game, to a place that the journey started at. This is something that games do plenty of time. You know, this isn't something that is unique to Skies of Arcadia, but it shows an awareness sort of for form and structure that I find pretty damn great. So really what we need to do is just move our way through the space and then go from this connected part into the rest of Soltis, which isn't perhaps as exciting a final dungeon as things could be, but it's still pretty enjoyable, I would say. Atmospheric and fairly large. The bigger issue is just figuring out my way through it. There's a lot of curving around these corridors and then going down a segment and then taking another curve, and it's tricky to figure out. I know I kind of do a turn around the left and all about the space, but you can see that there are disconnected passageways and things like that. My controller, silly you, but you can even see that there are areas down below where there's no particularly appropriate exits. So this is still an effective space to be in from a tone standpoint. I think the tone of Solstice is very strong. This sort of impending dread before a final battle against an opponent, against an enemy who is just so emotionally devastated, because that's really what's going on with Ramirez. We're almost going, you know, unfortunately to phrase it like this, we're going to put down a mad dog, right? He'll rampage and rave and try and get his revenge on, you know, for Galcian. And no one is safe until we can take care of that. And it turns Ramirez into a far more tragic figure than you honestly would expect. He's sort of played up in the game to be very cold and remorseless and all sorts of things, but it turns out that he probably shows some of the deepest emotion out of some of the characters of the game. That sentence became a little less committal near the end, but I do think that Ramirez shows a huge sort of spring of emotion in this scenario. I could switch everybody's weapon, but I'm just going to run away. Not worried about my pirate ranking, not worried about anything else. We've gotten through the game and done mostly everything that I could have wanted, so this is where we are. I am completely lost already, which is silly, but you all saw me in the Dark Rift, so you know how terribly lost I can get. Encounter rate in this game, definitely one of the low points. There are just some practical functional things that Skies doesn't necessarily do great. That's definitely one of them. And it seems like such a simple thing, but it really makes a big difference. Wow, I was going to slot everyone for yellow. I forget how effective it is against purple. So we'll just sort of attack and go from there. Oh, it's defending. See, I wanted to kill a couple enemies on the way, get some damage done. Yeah, our characters are fairly powerful, so I'm not too worried about any of this. Really, Solstice is a surprisingly relaxing space for a final dungeon. It's not a tepid place. It's not as though the stakes aren't felt while you're in this space. Those stakes are sort of felt by virtue of the fact that it's this ancient thing come alive and there's these crazy beasts or everything inside of it. But it's not as crazy, and I mean, we always make the comparison back to Final Fantasy VII because it's still vaguely within the time frame, 1997 compared to 2000. It's only 3 years younger, or older rather, than this game. And so one big thing, I am really lost. That's terrible. So a very important thing about this game is sort of, you know, Northern Crater had this really strong feel of this is it, and I don't know if you get that as much in Skies, which is a bit unfortunate, but definitely not the worst thing in the world, I suppose. I mean, it's definitely functional as a space and definitely gets the job it sets out to do done. You know, sort of ancient monsters and old relics of the past age coming out to attack us all before finally transforming into a different sort of space where it's, you know, the more sort of technologically clean space of inner Solstice, sort of like what we saw at the Great Silver Shrine. But I don't know if this dungeon has as much momentum as it could, which is probably a criticism that I have no problem leveling against this sort of dungeon. If only because everything that led up to this dungeon was incredibly exciting. The whole battle leading up to the Hydra, even moving through the Hydra itself, the battle with Galcian, all the aftermath that came in the battle with Galcian, all the different character sacrifices and things like that. How did that not hit the other hunter? That's strange. The world may never know. So I think that the lead up to this space isn't... I mean, the lead up is fantastic, and then I don't know if it squanders that lead up, but I don't think it necessarily uses that lead up to the best of its ability. Which is unfortunate because I think that Skies is generally good about providing heavy context and drive for its spaces. So while I like this space, and like I said, it serves perfectly well in terms of function and tone, I think it could have been more, which is a strange sentiment to have about a space where you think that it is perfectly competent, but you know that it can still be something better. Let's see. So I'm caught off there completely. We just move around and go wherever I can. I always forget the space is here. So you're going to get to see a lot of Solstice. So I mean, the music is suitably somber, the stakes are pretty dire, but as a space, I don't even like it as much as I like Dangrel Island or something like that. In fact, actually, my favorite space in the game is Rixus. But that's just me sitting back and talking about, like, favorite things. Rixus is a totally, really, consistently felt dungeon. It has a texture to it, and, a certain ineffable quality that I can't quite obviously put into words because I used ineffable. You know, it's sort of an unquantifiable enjoyment that I have of Rixus that I get here to some extent, but I lose a bit because it doesn't have the same sort of texture that Rixus does. So definitely a space that I enjoy returning here and sort of being having the final space of the game be the space that was sort of first introduced to us. This space commands a lot of respect, a certain degree of felt history. I think it could have been something a little stronger. And that's no fault of the game itself. I think there are just other spaces that are particularly well crafted. So it's a sneak attack, but it didn't attack us first. Can I run away?
Retreat!
I have never seen that happen in the course of me playing this game. That is... And I've played through this game maybe a dozen times, even though it doesn't seem like it with how lost I am here or how many things I'm forgetting, but it's like... there are still things in this game that surprise me. That was one of them right there, for sure. Yeah, I was gonna say, moving to the left, moving clockwise gets me more to where I want to go. Because if I want to, I can leave this dungeon and say, like, there were discoveries to be made. Or let's say that I was playing on Skies of Arcadia Legends and I found the chest where Lord Bane was fought. I would want to leave and turn in that bounty, even though really there's not much left to do in the game, but that would possibly increase my pirate ranking if that was something I cared about a lot. And I do care about my pirate ranking. So we are still... Oh, actually, we went down because of our running away. We were Vi's King of Rogues. So when I said that that running away makes a difference, running away does make a difference. So just know that we were once Vi's King of Rogues. And we blew it. But I think we'll manage. It's not about the title, it's about the accomplishment of beating this game. And so, while it hurts me that I won't be Vi's the Legend or anything like that, I'll just sort of have to deal with it. Because I don't think there are any more dialogue choices to be had. Unfortunately. So it is what it is. But at least you see a demonstration of how that works. But I also want to, like, random encounters are high in the space, and I'm semi-lost, and I want to get to where we need to go without editing. So I think the general game plan might actually be to get to Ramirez, but not fight Ramirez in this video. Much to everybody's chagrin. And we'll just sort of take this time to consider what Skies of Arcadia has been. And what I think it is, it's a game that uses formula very effectively, and then is able to shake up the formula in the latter end. Maybe not to a radical extent, but to enough that it's worthwhile to note. And I think that at the end of the day, what you have is a competent RPG that has a good sense of self and a strong sort of, not quite, you know, ideology that it wants to impress upon the player, because that sort of implies a stronger sort of felt touch than I think the game has. I don't think this is a game that's trying to pontificate, at least not intentionally. What I do think is that this is a game that manages to say a lot of things just through the course of its actions. So, I mean, those things that it's saying may be, in theory, fairly cliche or fairly basic, but I think that those things end up being effective. And so one of the things that I think is probably Sky's biggest strength is its ability to not sort of take the piss at itself or anything like that. Like, it doesn't nudge the player and be like, oh, we're doing this, or anything like that. It just sort of presents things fairly naturally, with a lot of cohesion and confidence. And so we don't really need to have the game wink any eyes at us or anything like that. And I think a lot of the effectiveness of Skies comes from it just honestly sort of presenting a story to us in a very romantic and genuine fashion. These are characters that we respect. These are deeds that we accomplish that we find heroic or otherwise noteworthy. And so at the end, what you have is basically a highly functional story that is not afraid to be both very traditional, but also to sort of play within the boundaries of those traditions. Within the context of its release, it was also a tonal breath of fresh air. Pardon me there, my words getting a little caught up. You know, because the only other real game for an RPG that's on this system that really holds any strong memory in my mind is Jesus, where the friggin' poo am I going? Around. Okay, cool. The one that really holds some stuff in my mind is Grandia 2, which has probably a better combat system than this. It's certainly more active, but it doesn't seem to reach the same heights of Skies of Arcadia because it doesn't seem to have as much confidence in itself. Grandia 2 sometimes feels like a game that is trying too hard. Like it's trying too hard to impress you. I don't think Skies of Arcadia cares if it impresses you or not. I think impressing you or getting your respect is just a happy byproduct of whatever it does. Whereas Grandia 2 is working a little harder to sort of dazzle the player. Which is hard to explain without stopping for a minute and playing like 20 minutes of Grandia 2, which I'm not going to do. But really, when I think of RPGs, those are the ones on the system. Especially the JRPGs. If I think of a Western RPG, I think of Silver, but like 2 people in the world have played Silver, and Silver is also not very good. Silver has interesting combat again, where you stab or slash your sword depending on how you move the stick, but it's not a very good game. So I don't know. I say Western just because of its presentation. I don't know. I don't even know who developed Silver. But definitely, I think a strength of Skies, if I want to sit here and extol it as much as I am, is that I don't think it, like I said, I don't think it tries to, you know, on an intentional level, wow the player or bedazzle them with spectacle or sort of dissemble in order to gain the player's affection. I think that the affection that a player might get or direct towards this game is a byproduct of everything that the game sort of just does. And you either buy into it or you don't. I obviously buy into it quite a bit. Other people don't need to buy into it as much. Other people have watched me play this game and said that they don't quite understand what the appeal in it is, you know, based upon what they see, even though they understand the emotional feelings I might have about it, because they can project the emotional feelings they have about other games onto this. So the thing here about the Let's Play then is that one of the things that we're trying to accomplish, and hopefully have done so by now because we are at the end of the game, is just making it clear that what I'm trying to do is to capture a type of experience, a type of emotional surge, as it were, that the player, that you as the audience member can empathize with. Because I think we all have a game that we feel a certain degree of affection for, and I hope that through what I've done here, you can understand the affection I have for this game. Oh. See, there we go again. So after fighting some battles, I'm Vi's King of Rogues. So you can see how everything sort of functions and fades and moves in and out. Hopefully we can stay Vi's King of Rogues, which is the second best. Skies of Arcadia, the original one, I don't think has any of the special titles. So like when you get all the exploration discoveries, you get something that is Vi's Exploration King or something along those lines. And you don't have that in here. Another strange one is Vi's the Fallen Pirate, but that's because in Skies of Arcadia Legends, one of the bounties that you fight are actually impersonators of you. And it's actually a surprisingly tough boss fight. Or it can be. So Legends offers a little bit more titles. Legends is probably the version of the game that I would recommend more people play, just because it has more stuff, more, you know, more discoveries, the bounties, a lot of stuff. Hamacho Island is included in it, so you don't need to somehow go online and find a save file of that data that you can then put onto a computer thing that you can somehow put on your VMU. Like, you don't have to go through all that bullshit, you can just play the game, which is great. The only downside to that is that the music on that disc is highly compressed. So I think the music in Skies of Arcadia is very good. And in order to fit all the information onto one GameCube disc, one of the things they did was they compressed like the ever-loving shit out of the music. So it's not a game that sounds as great as this one. Or a version of the game that sounds as great as this one anyway. But I don't know how much that matters to people. A pistol for Gilder, but that doesn't really matter that much. So you can get sort of semi-ultimate weapons in here, but I can still make do with a lot of the stuff that I've bought from Ryukan. And we'll make it through the space. I'm sort of taking a relaxing approach to this dungeon, and then, I mean, the real emotional thing will come at the end of the game. So this is cool, at least. The game gives us these nice views again. These sort of scenic vistas as we move through some of the space. And then the space fundamentally changes once we head into the inner area of Soltis. This sort of pseudo-tech world of, you know, Magitech, which is pretty cool. And it's actually not that hard to navigate compared to what else we've had. So it's mostly just moving around on these pads and figuring out where you need to go. I was going to say a random encounter's happening. Random encounters in Skies of Arcadia are not random, for two reasons. One, the screen will always stutter before an encounter is going to happen, so it does that little jaggy movement that you saw. You can always tell when that's going to occur. And then also, one thing that will happen is that if you're playing on the Dreamcast, it makes a huge whir, like the CD itself in the disc, or the GD-ROM rather, because Dreamcast doesn't use CD-ROMs, it uses GD-ROMs. It just like spins and makes the craziest whirring sound that you can imagine. Oh, another Moonberry and another Warrior's Pistol. It's almost as if those things don't matter to me anymore. But you still have like, so for instance, we have these side rooms that we can enter, and this might be a Ziv Bane. I forget. No. So we have a bunch of Moonberries. How many do we actually have? Probably not enough for Ica to learn Epsilon, or Omega Cyclone, rather. If we manage to get 2 more Moonberries from random drops, I will be amazed. And I will totally show it off. But the chances of that happening, like, statistically, I don't know. So moving about the space then, like, this is our navigational gimmick, because every dungeon sort of has one, but the nice thing about this is that it's not too bad. You just sort of run around on the platforms until you get to where you want to go. It's never anything that's been too terrible. I've never found myself excessively lost. Like, you think you're back down at the wrong spot, but it's just like, no, you just go wherever you need to go. Soltis, being, like I said, is sort of a chill dungeon. It's sort of this weird shell that exists around Ramirez, where all of the terrible shit is on the inside. And so we actually have a version of the first boss we encountered in the game as just a normal enemy now, which I think is a nice touch. And one round of not Cutlass Fury, Pirate's Wrath should be pretty good for dealing with this enemy, so I'm not going to skip it. we're just generally building towards the conclusion. As I've said, I'm letting the game sort of speak for itself. I know that might lead to some, probably an accusation of laziness, but I think the game possibly like just speaks better than I do at this point for it. And we'll sort of consider the meaning of everything, or the emotional impact of everything once we get to the end, where I will undoubtedly struggle to keep it together. Just hearing the end credits sound, music alone will definitely be a tricky proposition for me. This, I'm not ashamed to admit, is the first game that ever... I was like 12, and I remember coming upstairs from where I was playing the game, and I was just crying. Because sometimes you know that you're only going to have an experience once, right? And for me, this was, I'm only going to have the experience of playing this game like this once. That's just sort of a fact. Oh wow, we went all the way back. I don't think I've ever done that before in this space. So we'll just sort of do what we can. It's tempting to pause and edit and go back up to the top using the power of iMovie, but I enjoy taking this downtime before the final battle. I think it is useful. It's sort of giving me time to recharge my batteries and think about the experience that I've had playing the game in general and today. And really the most important thing is just for me to sort of collect my thoughts vis-a-vis the value of the total experience, because I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that Skies of Arcadia is a more valuable game than any other game. I think that's a tough proposition to make for any game. The value of a game is something that is so painfully subjective, at least in general, that it's hard to say to somebody that, like, this is an experience that you have to have. Which is why I hope that you can find some value in just living the experience vicariously through me. At the same time, you know, maybe there are games, I mean, there are certain games that you say, like, if you want to understand games, play these. You know, I would be like, here's a video game, and I would give somebody Tetris or something, right? So that they would understand, like, okay, this is one of the things that a game can do, and then from there I can build up to other quote-unquote essential titles. Skies isn't an essential title. What it is something very effective, though, at sort of what it does. So the trick is just to get on the right teleporter, but here I don't really have any choices. So it's really a trick after this teleportation, as far as I can tell, but there's also this door which I've not gone through, which might take me where I want to go. Like I said, not too difficult to move through. Yes, so we are totally where we want to go. So a fairly decent sojourn through the space. And we will move forward here a little bit. And take the teleporter to the top of the tower. And so that was a semi-leisurely stroll through Soltis. In the next video, I will fight Ramirez, and we will see the fallout from that, and perhaps I will finish the game. I do not know. It's going to be either the next episode or the one after that. So this was nice and calm. I hope you enjoyed it. Talked a little bit about the game. And I hope to see you in the next video. I love you very much. I will see you then. Bye.